Finally, some good news coming out of YouTube for once. Andrew Tate channels culled by YouTube after revelations about get-rich-quick cult. That's right, we're actually talking about a real cult now, not the made-up ones Mama Max talks about for views. Channels with hundreds of thousands of subscribers, including one with more than 450 million views, have been terminated by the video-sharing giant in the wake of a Vice News investigation into Tate's The Real World program. YouTube has called a number of big channels promoting Andrew Tate's online business academy, The Real World, including a Vice News investigation revealing how the scheme has been using social media platforms to exploit his young fans. Among the newly banned YouTube accounts was one dedicated to the real-world content, highlighted in the article, that had more than 600,000 subscribers. The channel had racked up more than 450 million views for its content promoting The Real World since it was created in December 2022. Despite YouTube saying that it had terminated channels associated with The Real World and Tate. So for those who don't know, do you guys know what Hustlers University, or as it's now called, The Real World is? And the reason they call it The Real World is it's the opposite of the Matrix, right? Andrew Tate and like Sneeko, all their fans, they say they're in the Matrix, right? We're not in the real world. And so being part of his pyramid scheme is being part of the real world. So he calls it The Real World. It's very shameless, very upfront. About how shameless he is, but much like any other scam, you kind of want to make it obvious that your scam is a scam, because everyone who gets involved with your scam you're selecting for people so dumb that if they fall for the scam in the first place, they're never going to be able to get out of it, right? It's very much the same thing as like, why do internet scammers still do the Nigerian prince scam through email if it's so well known? Well, because if anyone falls for it, they're going to fall for every other step of the scam process. If someone says, I'm a Nigerian prince and I've got millions, but I need you to send me like 80K because my money's frozen up, and then once that's happened, I'll send you 250,000. Like, if anyone falls for that, they'll go along with the whole rest of it. So they cast a really shitty net so that only the easiest targets get caught. Because if you make it a hard-to-detect scam, then you're going to catch people who are good at detecting scams. Then once it's time to start giving information and everything, you've wasted time. They're going to figure it out and they're going to not engage with you, right? So Andrew Tate does the same thing with Zoomers, where he basically makes it obvious what he's doing is a scam and a pyramid scheme, so only the dumbest Zoomers that will fall for it, and at that point, they're not going to fall out of it, right? And so what that pyramid scheme actually wasn't like, oh, give me money for a product and then and then you resell the product to people. That wasn't how the pyramid scheme worked. Instead, the way it worked was you would pay a subscription to get access to his classes, where he would basically just talk. It was basically just more of his podcast stuff, but the primary teaching of the classes was you need to make money. And what better way to make money than to repost Andrew Tate clips on YouTube? So you know how for years now you can't go through YouTube Shorts or pretty much anywhere on YouTube without constant, massive, multi-million view Andrew Tate clips uploaded by random channels popping up in your recommended? That's because those are Hustlers University members. Those are people who are doing what Andrew Tate told them to do. They pay him, and then what they do is make money off of re-uploading Andrew Tate clips to spread his popularity around and farming money off of the ad revenue. I don't get those. Trust me, they exist, Jade Monkey. I promise you they do. So YouTube's finally going against these channels now. Other real-world channels removed by YouTube include one with 264,000 subscribers and nearly 300 million views, and another with 50,000. The Vice News report published Tuesday detailed serious concerns about Tate's $49 a month program, which promises to teach teen boys the entrepreneurial skills to get rich quickly. Instead, critics claimed, the site was exploiting the influencers' young fans for their money and labor. It recruited them through promotional ads on social media, relying on laissez-faire moderation policies at YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, despite the site supposedly having banned Tate and the real-world content from their platforms. But not really, because the re-uploads made them a lot of money, and they didn't really go after them until recently, it seems. Kareem Mahmood, a disaffected former The Real World student, told Vice News how members of its affiliate marketing campus were tasked with making multiple social media videos promoting Tate and his business school each day. Once students had gained a big enough following on their social media accounts, they were entitled to earn a commission from each new recruit, in a marketing model that had... You mean there's Andrew Tate at the top, and then he recruits a bunch of people, and then once they reach a high enough level, they recruit a bunch of people individually, and then once they hit a higher level, they recruit more? So Andrew Tate's here, and then here's the first level people, and then the second level, and then the fourth level, and the bottom level. What shape is this? Yeah, it's a pyramid scheme. It's a pyramid scheme. He said students on the platform were pushed by their tutors to work long hours, sometimes 16 hours a day, and bombarded with red pill ideology amid what he described as a cult-like atmosphere. UK-based lawyer Jack Beeston, whose firm has been calling for The Real World to be deplatformed by social media companies, said Tate's targeting of young people for exploitation was the digital equivalent of grooming. The Real World's operating model is wholly reliant on social media giants like YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram as platforms on which to post their recruitment videos, which in turn generate valuable traffic for the sites. Despite the sites having supposedly banned Tate in the Real World content, Vice News found videos promoting Tate and his program proliferating on the platforms, with single channels having racked up hundreds of millions of views in some cases. That is not unnoticeable. In a statement, a YouTube spokesperson said a number of The Real World and associated channels, including ones identified by Vice News, have been terminated for violating our terms of service, which prohibit prominently featuring content from previously terminated users. Quote, when a channel is terminated, it is against our terms of service to open or use another channel or circumvent the policy suspension of one channel by activity on another. The spokesperson initially claimed some of the channels had been terminated last week, when Vice News pointed out that this was incorrect. As Tuesday's article had featured a new promotional video posted on the largest channel on Monday, the spokesperson backtracked and said the termination had instead happened this week. Ooh. See, these platforms are really desperate to cover their asses here. It's exactly what I said, by the way. How these platforms will literally keep content up that breaks their own TOS for as long as possible until media coverage, media pressure happens, and then they'll even lie to the media to try to make themselves look better for covering this shit up and allowing it on the platform despite saying it's not allowed, and then they'll get rid of it whenever they realize the risk is now too high for the reward of keeping the content and the traffic up on their platform. It's shameless. These sites do not care about any of the supposedly woke things they push for, right? One of the cult channels, with 264,000 subscribers, was banned for violating YouTube's spam, deceptive practices, and scam policies, which strictly prohibit content where the main purpose is to trick others into leaving YouTube for another site, said the spokesperson. That channel was terminated after Vice News flagged it to the spokesperson on Wednesday. Nathan Pope, an Australian man who has campaigned for the social media giants to deplatform Tate and his content, said he was pleased that YouTube has taken steps to remove much of the Real World content. But while a number of the larger The Real World channels had been removed, there was still work to do, he said. Some large The Real World channels remained active on YouTube, including one with 194,000 subscribers and 195 million views, and another with 160,000 subscribers. Vice News has flagged those channels to YouTube. They will do nothing about it, I assure you. Pope said that, prior to the Vice News article, he had flagged hundreds of The Real World videos to the social media companies, as well as emailing their executives directly outlining his concerns. But the companies had largely left the promotional videos online, responding that the content was not in breach of their rules. He believed that the site's moderators had previously failed to grasp both the threat posed to young people by The Real World and how the site operated as a decentralized content factory, flooding social media with a torrent of pro-Tate content posted by a large network of students. Have you ever noticed that conservative types like to name the bad things that they create something good? Like, or something that that sounds bad to criticize by its name, if that makes sense, right? Like when the hate groups call themselves something like gays against groomers. It sounds bad if you are not already initiated to ever even just be against a group called gays against groomers, right? Or yeah, like No Child Left Behind came before that, right? They name these programs and these things something that sounds horrible to criticize if you aren't initiated on everything, so the normies who don't know what's going on hear the left criticizing it and immediately assume, oh, well, those people are crazies. They're against a program called The Real World? Yeah, okay, yeah, the left would be against The Real World. Yeah, you know? Just to make it sound at least silly to criticize, right? I feel like that's gotta be the reason they do that, you know? He said it was crucial that YouTube keep The Real World off its platforms so that, quote, they cannot simply create new channels and rebuild. Quote, and other social media platforms such as TikTok and Instagram absolutely must follow YouTube's lead, he said. Neither TikTok nor Instagram have responded to requests for comment on their response at the time of the publication. Well, so this is a Vice News article about how YouTube seems to be going after these Andrew Tate clip re-upload videos that are just all over the site, literally getting hundreds of thousands of subs and tens of millions, in some cases hundreds of millions of views. Andrew Tate himself has been banned off of these big platforms for quite some time because he's like literally a sex criminal. However, he is still very popular. He still has a massive fan base. And something that a lot of people forget is that just banning one of these people, if they're popular, doesn't completely get rid of them. Like, there are Alex Jones re-upload videos on YouTube and Nick Fuentes re-upload videos on YouTube with millions of views. And YouTube knows they're there. And YouTube doesn't really care, from what I can tell. And I feel like that's the big problem, that YouTube will do the bare minimum just to please, like, broader media when there's pressure to, you know, crack down on hate content online. But they won't actually apply their TOS in an effective way. And on top of that, the cherry on top of all of this is the fact that constantly, literally all the time, YouTube is false striking channels for all sorts of TOS violations that have nothing to do with any of the content of the video. So you've got swaths of innocent channels constantly being false striked, mostly smaller channels. Meanwhile, these massive multi-million sub channels, or sometimes just, you know, hundreds of thousands of sub channels, are getting away with breaking TOS in every video every day. And YouTube doesn't care. Meanwhile, people are being false striked constantly for doing nothing. It almost suggests that there is a system set up behind the scenes at YouTube for larger earning channels to maybe get looked at a little less closely by the content moderation bots, maybe. A little less closely than the smaller channels do. Perhaps, just maybe, that's the case. Who knows? Maybe.